Get to our political panel this morning. Joining me is Paul Goldsmith from National and Willie Jackson from Labor. Good morning.
Morning.
Good morning. Paul, we've got a photo of this meeting last night that you were at. Things got a little bit heated. Who's that guy? He's a local board member apparently doing the gun gesture to you. What's that about?
Yeah. He got a bit worked up. It was a good public meeting. There's a good 200 or 300 people there in Mount Eden. People talking about the housing intensification changes to the planning, and so in all these meetings you do get a strong variation of views.
He looks like an Egg Party member, doesn't he?
Yeah.
He looks like a Te Pāti Māori.
He wasn't the most eloquent.
No, he's the guy that was talking about the police helicopters in Remuera.
Look, I mean, the only point we're doing there is that we need to have housing affordability is still an issue. We want to get some more intensification, particularly around the railway stations. At the moment you do anything like that, obviously people have very strong views about what happens on their properties, and so that's what you're sort of...
Willie, what do you reckon? Because there's in that meeting last night, there was the older generation who own the character homes, and then the younger people saying build up. What do you reckon?
Well, the big question was, where was the Bush? I mean, he rolls old Goldie out there. Where was Bush? Hiding in Wellington. Old Goldie had to front all the... I won't say that. But they were, look, you got to take the... We've got to build, but here's the hard part. You have to take the community with you. Now, that's hard for these guys because they're out of sync with the communities. And there you saw a very good example of that. That's how much they're riling communities.
But it doesn't matter who. I mean, it doesn't matter which government. If you come along to an older generation who love their character home and say we're going to put a 6-story place next door, they're not going to be happy.
I mean, you can't blame the older generation. There's some beautiful homes. It's about getting the balance. It's about getting the mix. You can't just come in and say we're going to roll over.
That's right.
So how do you take the community with you? You put Goldie out there and you don't roll the main man out, Bishop. The Bush.
There was a local meeting. It was in Mount Eden. It was a very good time.
I got to say, it's
in the Epsom electorate.
Did the government ask? Were you asked to go?
No. It was in the Epsom electorate, and I heard it was on, so I turned up.
Why'd you send Seymour over?
They gave me a speech. I think he was overseas or something.
Send the Seymour over.
Hey, new alcohol laws. So Nicole McKee announced, ironically, at the Lula Inn. Have you guys ever heard about the bottomless brunch at the Lula Inn?
I'm not familiar with the Lula Inn.
Okay, all right. Well, you've missed out on a good time. Anyway, that's where Nicole McKee made this announcement about loosening some alcohol laws, particularly for major events. Get them in the pub. Get the punters drinking. What's wrong with that, Willie?
It's again an example of these guys. They're in the pockets of the booze barons. They're in the pockets of the tobacco companies.
Willie.
Listen, I've been part of a community that's responded to this. We don't want to see booze shops by schools. This has been happening for years. It doesn't matter what happens. These guys go, you want to build, have more booze shops? Away you go. All our crew who went over to Australia, they didn't go over there because they couldn't find a drink, right? They went over there because of the attitude of Goldie's mates who will do anything for the booze barons, for the tobacco companies, for everyone. It is shameful. They'll open everything and they'll bring rifles
one of these days you might be balancing your commentary.
I'm just trying to be reasonable here.
Minister, let's give the minister a chance to respond.
Look, all we're doing is we're keeping the very sort of broad framework that allows local communities to have a real influence on what goes on in their neighbourhood. But they, like they always did, over-egged it in the last election, and so you could have people in Invercargill complaining about somebody opening up a shop in Waitakere, and that made no sense. And then the shop owner couldn't actually reply to the criticisms being made. So we're just making some tweaks to make that more reasonable. We're also, at the same time, tightening up the rules around home deliveries, which was pretty loose.
Yeah, it was loose.
And now you've got to have some idea and some interpretation. So it's a balance. We're tightening up in some areas, but also trying to remove some regulation.
Keep it more local.
And then we're also trying to make it easier for special licences, so people can have a drink when they're watching.
Which I think, Willie, surely you'd be on board with. If there's Rugby World Cup or something's on, you want to go to the pub and.
He's a killjoy. He's a killjoy.
Wowza.
We're into a bit of common sense. So of course we're going to support our local rugby fraternity, but that's not the point here.
It is. the point.
point is,
It is the point.
That's what she announced.
What are the values of this government? They're in the pockets of the
right.
tobacco companies. You don't want to hear it because you two, Ryan, since you become a big shot, you're out of sync with the communities.
I just like a drink,
So,
Willie.
well,
I just like a drink
yeah,
like
yeah, drink too
everybody
much.
else in this country.
Talking about pockets, are there pockets and gang patches that your mate Penny Henry wants to give back to everybody or not?
All right.
Stop trying to get
let's
on to
move
your favourite topic.
Supermarkets. Speaking of, proving that you're not in the pockets of the supermarkets, Willie, will you commit this morning to breaking up the duopoly if you were in government?
Well, we were in government, and that was a big question. And we
Did you answer it?
Well, I think we created an environment, a new environment. We put a commissioner.
You did nothing.
And we.
You're in the pockets of the supermarkets.
What have you
Willie.
seen? I heard your terrible interview with Adina Williams the other day, and as she said to you, we created an environment where prices started to come down, and that's what
they were right.
prices
They were
have
going up
come
through the
down,
roof.
and we've looked at it seriously.
Prices are coming down. Go and ask anyone out there on the street if prices are coming down. They will say no.
Don't try and use my lines when you're in an interview. You know those are the type of lines I use. Just building more supermarkets is not the way to go.
It's an obvious place to start. If you want more competition,
people
you want to build more
relief
supermarkets.
now. They want price relief now. Oh, we'll build another supermarket. Oh, that's great. The duopoly loves that. How about doing what you said you were going to do, which was address the cost of living and look at looking at prices and maybe regulating prices because it's out of control and people
Regulating
are suffering.
prices.
It might
You
be
think we
something-
should regulate supermarket
I'm saying
prices?
that's something that we should be These guys should be looking at something like
Wow.
that.
I think the
because
Soviets tried that at one point
no,
and
I'm
it
not
didn't
saying
work
to do
very
that,
well.
But I think we need to look
All
at
right,
some
Willie,
relief.
Okay, let's
for
give the
the
Minister a
consumer.
chance to respond. You mentioned the Soviets with regulating prices.
Yes. Yeah, well, look, we're not into that. And obviously, what you want to do over time is have more competition, and that's why we're going to bring in this fast-track sort of approach so that new competitors can come in. Because there's some practical difficulties about building a new supermarket to compete against the incumbents, and we're going to make that easier. And long term, that's going to make the big difference. And even in the short term, it puts more pressure on the incumbents, and that's what we need to do. Now, the previous government would go and, they'd say, give everybody $1,000 or do something, spray money around, and that's how we got ourselves in the shambles that we're in.
What prices would you regulate? Would you say butter can't cost more than $10?
Well, hang on. I mean, do you reckon butter? It's out. How much does it cost for butter? Do you know? I bet you
No.
don't.
Do you know what,
you
Willie?
know.
I have no idea because my husband doesn't
There you
shopping.
go.
Okay.
Yeah.
And I'm quite upfront about
You got
that.
butter out of control, cheese out of control. I'm saying
up 46%.
We're saying let's create an environment. We tried to do that. Duncan, we did some terrific work in this area.
Duncan,
over 6 years. So you got an environment now where at least we address this. Did we address breaking up the duopoly? Of course we did.
But you're going on. But all I'd say is,
Yes, I am going on.
look, we're serious about getting more
You're not
competition
serious.
into the supermarket area. Nicola Willis has been pushing very hard in this space, and the obvious place to start is to make it easier for new
No
entrants.
adjustment.
We have to
What
let
about a
you-
cost of
gentlemen,
living? Do something in
Shut
that
down
area.
your engines. We'll leave it there.